understand how you are feeling, but you are a chosen race, a chosen generation. I understand it doesn't look good right now in your situation, but you are a royal priesthood. I know what it may look like, how you are feeling, but you are a holy nation. In fact, you, yes, you are God's own people. And by my count, that's something to smile about. By my count, that's something to open up your mouth about. And last time I checked my Bible, it read, let the redeemed of the Lord. But this does not mean, as some would suppose, that because you are God's own people, Peter wants to let them know this does not mean that you will live a life exempt from trouble and free from trial. This does not mean that you will live a life free from persecution or big-headed backstabbers. No, does it mean that you will live a life free from slander, defamation, or misrepresentation. And I can hear Peter in my sanctified imagination standing up right here testifying to those in the room all around him, saying that I can tell these folk this is because this is not something I heard, but this is something I found out by myself, because I've been lied on, I've been cheated on, I've been talked about and mistreated, I've been used, I've been scorned, talked about short heads before. I've been up and I've been down, almost level to the ground. But the reason I can write and encourage you is because I found out for myself that as long as I got keys, as long as I got it, I don't need anybody else. And I wonder if that's your testimony on the day. I wonder if I've got it as long as I got King Jesus church folk on this 90th anniversary in here on today. I wonder if I've got any folk who don't mind opening up their mouth and witnessing to the fact that you can lie on me all you want, you can talk about me all you want, you can mistreat me all you want, but baby, as long as I got King Jesus. And Peter writes to these scared, scattered, and starved Christians to encourage them and say to them, you will get through this. In fact, it doesn't matter what you've lost, what you had to leave behind, and it doesn't matter what you had to do without, because as long as you got King Jesus, you can get it all back plus some interest. You can get it all back plus some more. You can get it all back, and it's going to sparkle, it's going to glitter, and it's going to make those enemies and those backstabbers be seen. And he assures them, and you and I today, by saying that you are a chosen race, meaning that we've got a connection to the one who chose us. He says that you are a royal priesthood, meaning that we've got access to the one who called us. And he says you are a holy nation, meaning that we've got a special relationship with the one who created us. He suggests that because Christians have King Jesus, we've got a special connection. Because we've got King Jesus, we've got special access. And because we've got King Jesus, we've got a special relationship with the Father. And I don't know how you feel about it today, but that's some good news on a Sunday morning. And if that makes you happy, I hope that this makes you happy. Because as I read the text, the real shout is not about who you have, but rather the real shout is about the one that has you. Peter says you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, but that can be put aside because what really matters is you are God's own people, literally suggesting that the believer doesn't just possess God, but the believer is possessed by God, thus further backing up his claim that we gonna be all right. It doesn't matter what we're going through, we gonna be all right. It doesn't matter what Nero and them are doing, because we gonna be all right. It doesn't matter what Trump and them are doing, because we will be all right. And Peter here in this text speaks to the psyche of the believer. He speaks to the core conscious of the believer. But number two, he also speaks to the purpose of the believer. He says, I'm not writing this letter just to make you shout. That's all well and good. We ought to shout. We ought to open up our mouth. But rather, I'm writing this letter so that you can get to work. He says that you got some work to do. In other words, I believe that Peter is writing so that they can realign and reconfigure their identity with their purpose. He's metaphorically speaking, looking at them, and he's looking at their current condition, seeing that many of them have begun to focus on their situation and stop focusing on their salvation. Many of them have started to focus on their problem, and in focusing on their problem, they have taken their eyes off their problem solver. Many of them, no doubt, have begun to focus on what's going on around them, and they forgot the one who controls everything. But Peter writes to jar them out of this seemingly baseless existence in order to put them back on the right track. He says there is a reason you've been chosen by God. There is a reason that you are preciously possessed by God. And this reason is found in the B clause of verse 9. Listen to what it says. In order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. In other words, the purpose and function of the believer is to tell of the goodness of God. The believer's purpose is to witness to others concerning the mighty acts of God. And Christians are to witness of what God has done, what God is doing, and what God will do. And this witness, we must understand, is to be delivered both through verbal proclamation and by ocular demonstration. In other words, let me unpack that. He says that folk ought to hear your witness and folk ought to see your witness. He says folk ought to hear your praise and folk ought to see your praise. He says folk ought to be able to hear your testimony as well as see your testimony lived out every single day of your life. In other words, if you are going to talk like a Christian, you might as well walk like one too. And we must understand, this is not some circumstantial thing. There is no free pass in Christianity, because you've got to be prepared to walk like a Christian when the sun is shining and when the sun hasn't come out for 5 days. You've got to be prepared to walk like a Christian when you feel good and when you don't feel good. And you've got to be prepared to walk like a Christian even during times when it seems like things in your life can't get any worse. I heard an old preacher say, more than only 2 times that you ought to praise God, when you feel like it and when you don't feel like it. What if I got somebody in the house that said, I woke up, my back was hurt, my knees were hurt, I couldn't hardly get out of bed, I didn't know if I was going to make it, but soon as my feet struck down, there was a praise in my heart and a praise on my lips. And since I'm here, dressed up looking fine and looking good, with my Bible in my hand, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall And Peter says that we've been called out of the darkness of our situation into the light of the Lord's love, not to sit idly by like some statues or some stick figures, but rather we've been created and called and chosen by God for the purpose of giving God some praise. He says we've been called out of darkness into the light of the Lord, so some folk down here on earth can open up their mouth and tell the sick that there is a man named Jesus that can heal their body. Peter said we've been called out of darkness, so some folk down here can open up their mouth and tell the mute, the deaf, and the blind that there is a man named Jesus who can make the deaf hear, who can make the mute talk, and who can make the blind be able to see again. Peter says that we've been called out of the darkness and into the believer. Then secondly, he speaks to the purpose of the believer. But lastly, here in verse 10, he speaks to the position of the believer. Listen to what he says in verse 10. He says, once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. And we must understand that many of us are guilty of defining ourselves based on our present positioning. Many of us are guilty of looking at where we are positioned currently in our lives, and based upon our present positioning, we come up with some definition of who we are and who we have yet to become, because we must understand that it is the culture and the climate of our society that suggests to us that we should define ourselves based upon where we currently find ourselves in life. For instance, if we have not achieved or attained some level of success, then defined by the world's standards, we should deem ourselves as being unsuccessful. If we have not achieved or attained some level of power, prestige, and or position, we find ourselves, the culture and climate of society deems us as being powerless. And if we have yet to achieve and or attain some level of security, serenity, and peace in our lives, our finances, and our relationships, then based upon the culture and climate of our society, we should define ourselves by the chaotic climate of our circumstances. And the Apostle Peter, I believe, having some understanding of human nature and the way in which we often define ourselves based upon our present positioning, suggests to us to take one's present position and not view it within the context of one's past predicament is to lose sight of what God then did and what God is doing right now. In other words, Peter suggests to us that we cannot truly have a proper appreciation for who we are as the elect in Christ until we reflect on who we used to be when we were wrapped up, tied up, and tangled up in sin. And Peter says, so don't get so caught up in your right now that you forget about your back then, because you haven't always been this holy. You haven't always been this sweet. You haven't always been this cute. You haven't always been this saved and sanctified. In fact, if there were some people who knew your whole story, they would be surprised to find you on a Sunday morning in church, wrapped up and tied up in your best clothes, sitting with a Bible in your hand, waving and opening your mouth. Because back in the day, y'all think I didn't know, back in the day you were tipping, slipping, and dipping. But look at you right now. He says to get your praise on right now, you can't forget about your back then. I'm closing. Peter says, once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. He says, once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. And I must confess to you that I like the language that Peter uses here in this verse. I like the shift that happens in this verse, and I like the movement that takes place in this verse, because in this verse, Peter uses a conjunctive adverb. He uses a conjunctive adverb, but now is a conjunctive adverb. It is used to draw contrast between the believer's past and the believer's present. But now this conjunctive adverb is used to draw our attention to the particular